the apartment across the hall. The horror box opens at 3 a.m., and tonight it whispers about an apartment where the lights never turn off. Neighbors whisper about the man across the hall, but no one dares to knock. Until now. I'd lived in my building for almost a year when I noticed something strange about the apartment directly across from mine. The blinds were always drawn, yet light seeped out from the edges every single night. Not once in all those months had I seen it dark. Even during power outages, when the rest of the floor was pitch black, that door still leaked faint light from underneath, like the room itself refused to sleep. My neighbors didn't talk about it much. If I asked, they brushed it off with quick answers. Strange guy, keeps to himself, or just works nights. Their tone always carried something unsaid, like fear stitched into casual words. One night, coming back late from work, I saw something that pulled me closer to the mystery. The door across the hall was cracked open an inch, light spilling through like a wound, and a faint whisper slid into the hallway. It wasn't words, exactly. More like a murmur, as if dozens of voices were stacked together, but speaking just low enough to avoid recognition. My key froze in my hand. I shouldn't have stopped, but curiosity glued me still. Then the door clicked shut. No footsteps, no movement. Just a sudden silence, like the voices had retreated back into the walls. My heart hammered so loud, I was sure someone could hear it through my chest. When I woke the next morning, something slid under my door, caught my eye. A note, written in jagged handwriting, read, "Don't look at his window. Don't listen to him at night. No name, no explanation." Just that warning. I couldn't stop myself from testing it. That night, instead of ignoring the door across the hall, I paused. I leaned slowly, peering at the tiny slit between curtain and wall, just to see what could be so forbidden. The light inside seemed unnatural. It wasn't warm yellow like lamps or cool blue like fluorescence. It shimmered, almost liquid, shifting across the wall like reflections in water. And then, someone's face turned toward me. The curtain snapped shut instantly, as if pulled by an unseen hand. My stomach dropped. Had he seen me? Or had it seen me? I rushed back inside, locking my door twice, trying not to picture that pale shape. That night, the whispers returned. But this time, I realized they weren't spilling randomly into the hall. They were aimed, directed. They seemed to curl around my door like smoke, pressing against my ears even as I buried my head. The words were clearer now. Open, 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 repeated again and again, like a chant. My handle twitched under unseen fingers. The following morning, my neighbor from 2 doors down stopped me in the stairwell. Her eyes were sunken, and her voice a hiss. "You're listening, aren't you? That's how he gets in. That's how it starts." Before I could ask what she meant, she rushed past me, practically fleeing the building. I never saw her again. Her apartment went dark that night and stayed empty for weeks until new tenants moved in. By then, I was hooked. The door across the hall became my obsession. Who lived there? Why did the light never dim? Why were people too scared to even acknowledge it? One night, the chanting grew louder. It wasn't whispers anymore. It was a voice right outside my door. Male, rasping, pushing through the lock. Open, just once. Just open. My handle twitched under unseen fingers. I stayed frozen in my bed until morning. When I finally cracked my own door, shaking, there was nothing in the hall. Nothing except a smear of wet footprints leading directly back to the apartment across from mine. That was the first time I noticed something terrifying. The footprints weren't shaped like human feet. They were too long, too thin, with pointed tips where toes should be, like someone dragging claws through waterlogged carpet. I slammed my door and called the landlord. He sighed heavily when I asked about that tenant. "Don't get involved," he muttered. "We've tried to get him out. paperwork never goes through. It's better if you just ignore it. Ignore it? How could I, when every night it pressed closer? The light under the door grew brighter, sometimes pulsing like a heartbeat. Sometimes the whispers included my name, spoken in that layered, impossible chorus. I stopped sleeping. I'd sit in my chair, staring at my door, waiting for the handle to twitch again. Every sound made me jump. Every silence felt like a trap. And then, one night, my door wasn't the one rattling. It was his. I opened my eyes to see the apartment across the hall shuddering, like something inside was pounding to get out. The hallway light flickered. Shadows worked on the walls. The pounding grew violent, and for the first time, his door creaked open wide enough to reveal more than just slivers of light. The glow spilled across the hall, bathing everything in shimmering distortion. Inside, I glimpsed walls lined with faces. Not photos, not paintings. Real, stretched faces, eyes open and moving, mouths opening and closing silently. I slammed my door so hard the frame shook, but I knew it wasn't over. I knew the light had touched me, that the faces had seen me, and that I had looked too long. That night, the voices changed. They no longer asked me to open the door. They told me what would happen when I did. They whispered every detail of how they would peel me into the walls. Sleep-deprived and desperate, I decided to confront him. The next day, I waited. Hours passed. No one entered. No one left. But when I finally pressed my ear to his door, I heard breathing. Right on the other side. I whispered, "I know you're there." The breathing stopped. Silence fell so heavy, it felt like the building itself had stopped. Then, slowly, something whispered back, "I know you're here too." I stumbled back, tripping over my own feet. The door never opened. But from then on, every time I left my apartment, I felt eyes behind the peephole following me. The final straw came last week. I woke to find my door unlocked, even though I swore I'd checked it twice. On the floor was another note. Same jagged handwriting. "It's too late once you've seen his window. I haven't slept since." The faces on his wall, the voices in my head, the light that never dies, they all leak into my room now. Sometimes I think my own reflection isn't mine anymore. And sometimes when I close my eyes, I see myself across the hall, standing behind those curtains, waiting for someone else to look too long. The horror box closes, but the light across the hall never will. If you live in an apartment, count your windows tonight. If one glows when it shouldn't, don't look. Because once you do, it's already looking back. The reflection in the elevator. The horror box creaks open at 3 a.m., whispering about an elevator that shows more than it should. Every night, a woman in my building would step inside, press a floor, and vanish. No one ever saw her exit. The first time I noticed her, I was waiting for the elevator on the 10th floor. The doors opened, and there she was, pale, silent, staring into the metal reflection as though it held her whole world. My curiosity rooted me in place. She never acknowledged anyone. Her hand hovered over the button panel, but she didn't press anything. Instead, she stared into the elevator mirror, her lips moving silently, whispering something I couldn't hear. When she finally moved, she disappeared before reaching the next floor. I told my neighbors about her, thinking someone else might have seen this. They stared at me blankly. "What are you talking about?" "There's never anyone there," one said, laughing nervously. Another shook their head. "You've been working too much." The next night, I couldn't ignore the pull. I waited for the elevator alone, heart hammering as the doors opened. She appeared again, eyes locked on my reflection. This time, the surface rippled as though water ran beneath it, and I felt the air grow colder. I stepped closer. The reflection didn't match her movements. Her lips moved faster than reality allowed. Her eyes blinked unnaturally. And then, slowly, she raised a hand, and the reflection in the mirror reached toward me, separate from her body, separate from the floor itself. I stumbled back, heart racing, but the elevator doors closed before I could react. My reflection stayed in the metal, smiling faintly, grinning in ways I couldn't. I ran back to my apartment, but the image lingered in my vision, even after the lights flickered. The next morning, I noticed something impossible. My elevator mirror reflected me in ways I didn't expect. Shadows stretched, my eyes blinked independently, and faint whispers came from the reflective surface. I tried to rationalize it, but every instinct screamed danger. Night after night, I returned to the elevator, unable to resist. She appeared every time, each visit more unsettling. The ripples in the mirror grew. My own reflection began to distort slightly, eyes blinking too slowly, smile twitching without my consent. One night, I pressed the emergency button while inside the elevator. The doors closed and the lights dimmed, leaving only her reflection and mine. "You see me now," a whisper said, echoing from the walls and the metal, reverberating through my chest. I tried stepping out. The reflection moved ahead of me, blocking my path, a perfect mimic with subtle differences. A crooked smile, extra shadow behind the eyes. Panic surged, but I realized the only way forward was to endure the ride. The elevator climbed floors, higher than my building should have allowed. Numbers flickered rapidly on the panel, skipping in impossible sequences. My reflection stayed opposite me, grinning, stretching, and leaning as though it could step right out of the mirror. Every floor brought new horrors. Faces appeared behind her in the mirrored surfaces, screaming silently. Shadows moved independently, reaching out, pressing into my chest, whispering secrets, promises, and threats. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't stop staring at the impossible reflections. I tried screaming. My voice was swallowed by the elevator, bouncing back distorted, as if multiple versions of me were shouting at once. Her lips moved, speaking words that matched my screams, but faster, sharper, cutting into my thoughts like shards of glass. Finally, the elevator stopped. The doors slid open, revealing an empty, dimly lit hallway. I stumbled out, feeling the pull of the reflections behind me. But the horror didn't end. Even as I ran to my apartment, my reflection in windows and screens followed, grinning faintly, patient, eternal. The next day, I avoided the elevator. But at night, when lights flickered or screens glowed faintly, I saw her, and I felt her watching me. Every reflection became a doorway, every mirror a portal, every surface a warning. Sleep became impossible. I noticed the whispers had begun in my apartment as well, faint and overlapping, echoing my own thoughts, mimicking my words. Sometimes they spoke of the elevator, sometimes they spoke directly to me, promising inevitable return. I tried covering mirrors, turning off lights, avoiding reflective surfaces, but it didn't matter. The whispers grew louder, the reflections persisted, twisting subtly. Sometimes I'd catch my own reflection, smiling faintly when I wasn't smiling. Sometimes I'd see her standing behind me, reflected where no one could be. One night, I returned, compelled by obsession. The elevator doors opened, but the mirror was missing, replaced with a dark, liquid surface. I stepped closer, hand trembling, and my reflection, her reflection, emerged, reaching through with fingers impossibly long, grasping, patient. I bolted, running through the hallways, back to my apartment, but the surface followed. The door was locked, but I felt pressure from beyond, a pull, as though the reflection was no longer confined to glass or metal. It was inside me now. I haven't taken the elevator since. Mirrors still scare me. Screens make me jump. Every reflection seems slightly delayed, slightly crooked. I know the elevator waits. I know she waits. I know that some night I will step in again. The horror box closes, but the elevator doors never truly shut. If you enter a lift at 3 a.m. and see someone staring, don't move, don't speak, and certainly don't touch the buttons. Because the reflections are patient and they remember every detail,